I'd like to call this meeting of the Oconee County Planning Commission to order. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Nix, if you would, please.
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you will. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. And we ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Haney, pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Item before you, the minutes of our last meeting. Is there any corrections?
Yeah, I have one actually. Let me get it.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have one.
I'm just saying, we need a motion to approve before we.
Oh,
Then we have
so moved.
second.
Now, any corrections?
Correction. And number 8, B is just a misspelling word motion.
Oh, okay.
That's it, yeah.
All right, if there's nothing else, all those in favor?
Aye. No.
All right. Do you have any, let's see, we have one. Public comment for non-agenda items. Moore's,
Worst.
I wasn't even gonna try your first name.
Forrest,
Okay.
how y'all doing?
Good.
Everybody feel good tonight?
Absolutely.
Good, good. My name's Forrest Moore, live at 541 Nimmons Bridge Road, Salem. I'm here to talk about the Rogue Gun Range that's over there. Y'all familiar with that? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, I was going to talk to you about the impact it has on me. And obviously, the first impact is noise, right? Sure, kind of all y'all have shot guns, been around guns. Is that, can I assume that? Been around high-powered rifles? Okay. You know how loud they are, right? Imagine that, from 9 o'clock in the morning till sunset, 7 days a week. And that's kind of what we put up with over there on, sometimes. It's not every day, because they do take days off sometimes, but the range is open. That's, for members to go 7 days a week, from sun up to sundown. So it's really loud. You find yourself going in the house, turning the TV up wide open so you don't hear it. You can't enjoy yourself out on your deck or whatever. And so that's the first impact, it's just a noise. It's just intuitive. The second one is, if you're like me, I got a few horses. Now, try to be on a horse's back, okay? And then all of a sudden they start shooting. You know where all their attention goes. Bam! On that noise. And so I usually put the horse up, when they start. So that impacts my ability to enjoy my property. And then another little thing that happened one time. We were shoeing a horse, and he doesn't like the farrier that much, but you could shoe him. They started shooting. He got a little nervous. He gets worried. We had to quit. So now I got to sedate the horse every time the farrier comes. So that's what we put up with over there, just on it could be on a daily basis. It's not as much as it was, It's tapered off quite a bit. But it could obviously ramp back up anytime. So, and then of course, property values. I mean, would any of you guys buy a house with a gun range next to it? No? So essentially your property might be just like worth zero. If you can't sell it and you can't enjoy it, it's not very valuable. And, that's pretty much the impact that I have. And my neighbors are in the same situation. And so that's pretty much it. Do y'all have any questions or anything? I don't know any of you, except for Teresa. I just met her.
Do we do this, Frankie?
I'm just wondering, what would you like the county to do?
Well, I don't know. You know, the county's growing. You're gonna have to address this at some point. My understanding is this situation has happened before, road gun ranges, and the county keeps kicking it down the road, kicking the can down the road. At some point, you're gonna have to address it because this is 2023, not 1953. You know, at some point in time, you're gonna have to do something about it. I don't know if that means zoning or how you're gonna zone it. The guy before us in the other meeting, he was talking all about the different zoning things. I'm not familiar with the categories. So I don't know what zoning I would wanna be in. I'd wanna keep my horses, you know.
I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here,
Okay.
but your zoning, you don't have any zoning on your property?
I don't think there's any zoning out there
Okay.
anywhere.
This guy doesn't have any on his property.
Nope.
All right. So, do you want the government, I'm speaking of the county, to tell you what you can and can't do with your property? I'm just saying, if we had a zoning that says no, can't have the gun range there, then he has property, he can't do what he wants. Would you want people to tell you what you can't do with your property? Say they come up and say you can't have horses.
Okay. That's a fair enough thing, but what about?
I mean, I understand, I know about the gun range. I mean, I understand the noise
Okay.
and understand, because I wouldn't like it beside my
Here's the-
house.
here's the
I don't
thing.
like chicken houses either, but I've got.
Chicken
got 'em all
houses ain't
around
gonna
me.
bother me, but here's the thing, what I do on my property, nobody knows about it. I'm quiet, me and the horses are quiet. As soon as they start up, they impact everybody within hearing.
But is that not his property? I'm just, again, I'm
It's his
going devil's
property. I
advocate.
get it,
I mean,
but,
that's his
well, my property
property.
too, what if I were to get permission from the NRC
Mr.
to
Chairman,
get a nuclear waste site on my property? You think that ought to be allowed?
That's-
Mr. Chairman. Okay, so, your county councilman is District 1,
Yes, sir.
Mr. John Elliott. I know this discussion has come up in council meetings before. We've had speakers on it. There is an ordinance that talks about noise, and at this point, that
Sheriff won't
ordinance,
enforce it.
at this point, that ordinance exempts gun ranges.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is if you want to pursue resolving this issue, that you talk to your county councilman and perhaps suggest a change to the ordinance. And it'll have to go through due process, but that is a path that you could at least try. My understanding is the folks that bought that property, when they bought it, they went through the application process with the county. There was opportunity for the neighbors to buy that property, but they did not want to. So-
Application process to put in a gun range?
Yeah,
I'm
they
not
went through
familiar
a
with that.
process. They went through a public hearing and everything, is my understanding.
So in order to get a gun range in Oconee County, you have to apply for it and get approved by the county?
I'm not sure about that, but
Right, James?
there was. There was discussion.
There was
As far as I
discussion,
know.
right, there was discussion, but when it's control-free, you don't have to get, I mean,
Yeah,
it's control-free.
right.
There was discussion about, I think we had,
You
The
might have
owners-
been here, Frankie, when all that went down.
The owners of the gun range actually just came and
Yeah,
made public notice that they were
Right.
gonna be starting up the gun
Right.
range. At the council meeting.
At a council.
Okay, so there's no permitting,
There's no permitting that I know
and
of.
there's no requirements for any safety inspections or anything like that?
That is outside my wheelhouse. You'd have to,
You know of any, James?
the,
I'm
You're the
pretty sure
attorney?
there's some kind of inspection through the state. I don't know, but I mean, it was,
I don't think the state
Think that should be
inspects it. That
something.
would have to be, the only thing that from the state would be DHEC if they were concerned about the lead.
I feel you, but I do have a question for you.
Okay.
have y'all reached out to the owners to see if they could adjust their times?
Well, I'm kind of retired now, and I do have a part-time job, I work from home. So their times are never gonna be, suitable for me, because I just don't see it. And if I wanted to sell the property, as we talked about earlier, I'm not gonna get too many people interested in it. And if you did a little research on the internet, properties that are located next to gun ranges are usually about 50% depressed from what they would be without. So, at least half the value of it is gone. And that's a pretty big hit for, some people.
Has the gun range, I guess, activity changed over time? Like, did it start with smaller guns and smaller noises, and has it escalated or progressed to bigger guns and bigger noises?
It escalated, and it was, we had to file suit against them on the South Carolina statute, the
Okay.
Gun Range Protection Act. Are you familiar with that? Okay, there's a Gun Range Protection Act, and if you have an existing gun range and it's out in the boondocks, and then people start building up around it, they can't shut you down. But there's another provision in there that says that if you have a bunch of houses there and people kind of come in and try to put in a road gun range, then you can file suit for nuisance on them, which is what we've done. So we're working through that. But in the meantime, I think the county ought to address it too. Because like I said, it's gonna come up again.
You said we, so how many, is everybody that's here is in on this lawsuit?
Not everybody, in the middle.
How many people are in on the lawsuit, do you think?
There's 10 property owners, I believe.
And they're all around the gun range, you guys,
Oh, yeah,
all 10 of you
yeah.
live up there?
Oh, yeah, and I'm not the only one with horses,
So did any of y'all know about the gun range when it was going in?
Nope.
There was no like signage out?
Nope.
No, still not required signage still, but he's supposed to have out. He's got it right there.
Well, they got some signs out now,
Right in his driveway.
noise area. They've proclaimed the place unilaterally said it's a noise area. I put a sign up and said, okay, no, it's a quiet zone. Who's gonna enforce that, right?
No notification before they went in, no signs, no nothing.
And they have a sign not to shoot before 1 o'clock on Sundays. And this past Sunday, at 9:45, they were out there shooting. So they don't even abide by their own rules on their own sign.
And this is the South. Sundays are sacred.
And we have spoken with the owner, and he even told me personally, Lawrence Day is Sunday morning, and then we'll shoot. And I'm here to make money. I'm sorry you don't like the noise.
Can I make a suggestion?
Well,
All of you, council meeting is tomorrow,
No, it's the 21st.
or 21st, excuse me. One tomorrow?
Tomorrow's election day.
No, so the next council meeting, put it that way, y'all need to show up at the next council meeting. Let the 5 councilmen, because they have more authority, and then they can direct us to do whatever, if we need to do something, or as come up with an ordinance or what have you. But the council needs to hear this.
We've been there, done that already.
Twice. We've been there twice already.
Yeah. I was-
Teresa has the dates
I was there.
with John Elliott. And he was for that, and he had to shut it down because there's 2 creeks on that property and run right into
Well,
you.
I still say you need to come back before and bring as many people as you can that will stand with you, and come back before those 5 folks and
And what are they gonna do?
technically demand that something get done. I mean, you can do it in a nice way. You don't have to be mean or nothing, but you can do it in a nice way, demand that they do something about this. And then it'll, more than likely, it would be some type of zoning type stuff maybe, or I'm not sure, they may bring it back to us.
Well, we can do that, but my understanding is this has gone on several times before, not just with this gun range, but other ones. And they keep kicking it down the road.
How many other gun ranges we have in the county?
98, John Drosky had one, you guys shut down.
Yeah, there's been several.
It's in the minute, yeah.
But right now, you're pursuing legal action And when does that supposed to take effect?
It started.
I mean, so y'all have a court date
I
set?
don't know about, I don't think we have court dates yet.
So you're going through the process of resolving this issue?
We're going through the process for the South Carolina statutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only route I know of.
Yeah, right.
Frankie,
Go ahead.
What's the likelihood of a rogue bullet hitting an animal or hitting somebody?
Negligent discharges happen at every gun range regardless of whether there's, whatever goes on. It just happens. I mean, it's probably happened. Anybody that shoots a lot eventually is gonna have a negligent discharge. And it could happen. I mean, it might be rare, but if it does, then, then you're impacted on that too.
And then typically at a gun range, there's a range master, right? Controlling what's going on there. Is there any kind of supervision while all the activities going on?
There's no supervision. It's, members just go in, they key in or whatever, unlock the gate and just go in and do what they want to do.
Okay, let's round it up.
Okay.
Last question.
Okay, so just one more time. I know you guys are litigating the issue, and I don't know how much the county can do to backfit and close down a gun range. However, there is a learning opportunity here for the county, and that would be, what ordinances could we put in place to better notify neighboring properties that a gun range is going in? That's one lesson learned that I hear from all this. So, that may be something we can add to the ordinance. Other things like, if for some reason the gun range does get through the process, then, we can look at evaluating our noise ordinance, which right now exempts gun range noise, as I recall. So I think there's at least some lessons we can learn and maybe improve our ordinances so that going down the road, we don't end up in this place again with a different gun range.
Or organize where they happen to end up, not next to residential areas or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot we can learn. And I sympathize with your plight, but it's gonna be a tough path for the government to go tell somebody that they can't do on their property what they've already gone through all the processes and been approved to do on their property.
No, my understanding is there's no approval process in Laconia County for a gun range.
There are some things in the process where, there's DHEC, I think, and there's some other things that they have to file for to get a gun range.
I don't think so.
Hey,
That's not true.
there's a state law section 38.
There's not a whole lot we can do about this decision tonight. So, I'd still suggest, that you get a hold of your councilman, get a hold of the rest of the council, and go from that point. And they will direct us to do whatever we need to do on our end.
Okay.
So, but I appreciate you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, Mr. Chair, is that if people hadn't been so vocal, we wouldn't have known, that you had 10 people here, say. So what I would suggest, if you do represent this again and people show up, you can stand there and say, I'd like to acknowledge the people who are here tonight and call their names and let them stand up, that
Okay.
kind of thing. So, what I'm saying is, a lot of times people don't realize everything's connected.
Okay. So we go in front of the county council.
Either
One
that
person
or
comes up and
everybody
says,
sign up.
Here's the people that are here, like represent about this issue.
If you have one spokesperson, yes, but if you have 10 people that are willing to stand up and say what they would like to say about, especially stories that represent the bad things that can happen, like you mentioned, the horseshoe thing, and your horse is getting spooked, If people have stories like, hey, I was out there baling hay and I could hear a bullet going over my head, something like that, those are the kind of things that I think make a big difference to people,
Okay.
especially the health and safety part of it.
Okay. Appreciate it.
And they will do more at that point.
That all? All right, well, I appreciate y'all hearing us.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have no one else.
I'm not signed up. I live right next to that
Letters.
gun range. My name is
I
Octavia.
make a motion that we let,
You have to come
lady
up.
speak.
Come on up. Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I mean
Thank
to
you.
be rude to
No,
you.
no, 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 come on up to the front.
I'm coming. I mean not to be rude to ne'er one of you guys and lady, but to live next to that gun range and hear those people firing guns anytime they wish to fire is terrible. I have horses and donkeys. They frighten my animals beyond words. When the firing starts, they run and hide. I don't know what y'all can do, but I'm appealing to you as council members that something can come down the pipe to help this situation. I'm a widow lady, yes. Go ahead.
See that lady in the front row right there?
What?
That lady, turn around, the lady in the front row?
Yeah.
She's with the paper. You know? Let her know.
Well, I'm
Sure.
talking to you right now.
I understand, but I'm giving you a solution to something you can do.
Well, thank you. I shall follow your suit. But I had something that I had to say because
I
I love
apologize.
where I live, and I appreciate you listening, and I hope something can happen. Thank you for your time.
Just one comment, one question for you.
Pardon me?
I just, one question.
Yes.
So, when you say your horses run and they hide, are you, when you're out enjoying your land or on your land or with your animals, and the gun range starts, and you hear the firing start, do you feel like there's part of your land you're not able to use as long as the firing?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Say it
Your
again.
animals are out on your pasture,
Yeah,
and the firing starts.
Yeah.
And they're spooked.
yeah.
Do you feel like there's an area of your land that you are not able to access?
No, I'm not able to. I am not able to go up to the upper part of my pasture and do a blasted thing because of firing and frightfulness of my horses. A horse that gets frightened can just charge, not intentionally to hurt you, but they are afraid. So they run, and you have to get out of their way.
Do you feel like bullets have gone into your property?
Pardon me?
Do you feel like bullets have gone into your property?
No, they've got that.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Do you feel like bullets have gone into your property?
What has gone in my property?
Bullets.
Yes, I found them.
Oh, you found them?
Yes. Did I bring them? No.
Okay.
Must I say more?
Nope, I
Thank
believe
you.
you.
Thank you.
And ma'am, would you state your name one more time?
Oh, yeah, sure, I'd be glad to. Octavia, you want me to spell it for you?
If you like.
Octavia, Childress, Childress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Okay,
Can we?
Is there any chance you could hear someone else? Thank you, sir.
state your name when you get to the podium, please.
Will do. Douglas Elliott, 475 East Stamp Creek Road. There's the gun range. Octavia's on one side, 2 doors down is a family land. It's been in our family for over 100 years. We go out there, just like everyone says, Saturday, Sunday, guns are blazing left and right. We're planning on building a house out there, but now I don't know. I don't know if I want to live with that. It's such a beautiful country out here. And, you know, it's shameful to think that there's somebody can come in and just start blasting away at any time they want. They don't follow their own rules. And some of the questions that you guys have asked, we've already done. We've talked to the papers. They did an article. The Channel 4 came out and did an article on them. We've been here. I've spoke. Half the other people have spoke. We've done research. We've confronted the owner himself and asked him. His attitude is, look, this is the way it is. I'm here to make money. And to have a neighbor come in and act like that and disrespect the rest of us who have been there forever and enjoy just like everybody else, to think that somebody come in and just do this. I mean, no one would want something going on in their house. Would you want this, someone shooting off fireworks every day, any day that they want in the front yard? Trying to enjoy a family picnic or, read a book or, walk your dog or whatever, and everyone's all skittish. I mean, we've had family come out and next thing you know, they're like, oh my God, what's that noise? What's going on? Where there's bullets flying around? I mean, it's just not a healthy place. And we have talked to you guys, we have talked to the councilmen, we've been told there's nothing that y'all can do, and basically just been shunned. And we're not gonna stop, because this is our lives. This is our day-to-day life. And, unfortunately, we live in a system where we have to have representatives, our representatives speak for us, and that's why we're here. Because we voted you guys in, we spend our tax money, we are part of this community, and we are, want to be treated like that as well, and not just brushed under the rug and just said, well, there's nothing that we can do. We wouldn't want it ourselves, but, there's nothing that we can do. So, I just wanted to let you know mainly that we've talked to the paper, we've talked to the councilmen, we've all spoke here before, we've brought out boards, we brought examples, and we just keep getting the cold shoulder. So it's kind of frustrating, but like I said, we're not gonna stop. We're taking our hard-earned money and having to hire an attorney to fight this. I mean, it's a lot of money to spend on something that you shouldn't have to. So those are my thoughts, and thanks for hearing me.
Thank you.
Y'all have any questions?
Good. Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Okay, if there's no one else, we need to move right along with, commissioner comments. Does anyone have anything? All right, staff comments.
Thank you, guys. Right before our last meeting, I shared this map with you from the OJRSA on sewer requests from January of '23 through September of '23. And obviously, several sites on here. This is just to keep you guys apprised of where they are getting requests for sewer service. And just wanted to make sure this was shared with everybody who might like to see it. It is in a grid pattern, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. It does represent different areas of acreage. They don't identify the exact parcel that anything is on. And then also the retail provider for that sewer service. That's everything I got.
That's it? All right, Ms. Teresa, the floor is yours.
All right, here we go. Last chapter to be reviewed in the comp plan. I know you guys are really anxious. Chapter 11, land use. The land use element is the centerpiece of the comp plan. The purpose of this chapter is to profile existing land use patterns and forecast future land use. I don't know how much we want to be efficient. There are 23 checkpoints. I could see that the county's achieved 6. So do you want me to read every one that they haven't done, or just the 6 they've done? James says, okay, just the 6 they've done. So, nothing on the first page. Page 2. 11144, continue to work with the OJRSA and other infrastructure providers on expansions to serve residents. We all know that's happening with Sewer South, so check that one off. 11145, seek resources, plan for, and implement the innovative development and redevelopment of unincorporated areas such as Fairplay, Oakway, Newry, and Utica. And that's, the Newry Mill has been rehabbed, and their Utica Mill is, the plans for that rehab is underway. So that's I think that can be checked off. 11151, work with the developers and other public and private agencies and organizations to encourage and enable development of affordable housing options. That's Utica and Newry, actually. 11161, work with the state, Sumter National Forest, Duke Energy, the Army Corps of Engineers, and other organizations to provide reasonable and safe access to the county's lakes and rivers. The park system, the county worked with Duke Energy and its shoreline restoration over there at High Falls, so you can check that off. 11162, explore partnerships and alternative methods of connecting residential, employment, recreation, other essential services, and communities such as greenway trails. The Greenway in Walhalla the digging for that and the development for that has begun, so you can check that one off. And nothing on the back, nothing on the back page except 11171, review and update components of the comp plan. I mean, we're reviewing, but we're not really updating, so nope, don't count that one, okay. That's about it.
I move we accept Ms. Spicer's review of Chapter 11.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. That's the last one, isn't it, Ms. Spicer?
It is, yeah.
Congratulations, great job.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks for your persistence.
Happy to.
All right, item number 9, discussion regarding agricultural control-free zone with county attorney. The county attorney is on the phone.
Okay.
So, I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Haney, since you were the one that
Make
wanted
sure everybody
this.
can hear.
Kind of muffled. Can you hear me?
Everybody hear?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you all for making this accommodation. And my stomach is still very volatile, so if I have to jump off, I'll just mute you. And I'm sorry. In any event, I think it's pretty straightforward, at least as I understand the control-free ag notion. There are two hurdles. Well, I would say no, not viable, not a plausible plan. First and foremost, and they're related to one another, is any kind of zoning regulation y'all are going to put on the books needs to be consistent with the comprehensive plan in accordance, the state law term it uses, in accordance with the comprehensive plan. As I understand control-free ag, the idea would be similar to control-free otherwise in the county, and there's at least 6 or 7 places within the comp plan that I saw, fostering agriculture, fostering land protection. I think this goes in the other direction, unless someone can tell me otherwise. The second point is very much related to that, is spot zoning. This opens up the door for the ability for the county to approve a use that's very dissimilar to what has already been essentially authorized in the area via the ag district. So it would open up the county if you get control-free, and any kind of use could go in there to the spot zoning claim. So inconsistent with the comp plan, likely to result in a spot zoning case or 3 or 5. But that's, as I understand the proposal, which is really just based on the wording of it, control-free. But if there's some elements to it that are not, quote, control-free, when it's still required to be agriculture, you're just talking about perhaps density, changing the density requirements, what have you, then we can talk about that. But if it's just, hey, give some folks a chance to go back to control-free, then I think that's going to unwind the whole Chapter 38 really would have to be redone. I'm not saying it can't, but I don't know that that's the end result you're looking for.
Mr. Root, so what we were looking at was the amount of properties in the control-free zone that have the agricultural tax exemption from the county on them, and identifying those properties moving forward. So it's not that we're making or allowing somebody from ag residential or ag zoning to go to ag control free. It's just identifying the ag properties in the control free zone.
So they're already in control free.
That is correct.
So this is not a movement back to control free from a truly zoned area. It's just, I guess it would be similar to what I guess it's the Ag Task Force talked about. I mean, these agricultural districts. So these folks are going to have a label for agriculture. They're still in control free, so they don't lose that freedom of control free, but they have this moniker or something. This is agricultural control free.
But that's,
How is it different aside from the name?
well, it gives us the ability to create an overlay so that if anybody buying property next to the ag control free zone, they will have an understanding that there is agricultural events happening on this property. And the more we can get out to the individuals buying, to have them understand what's going on, hopefully it will alleviate some of the rifts that the neighbors will have amongst each other. Most of the time it's because of a lack of communication and a lack of knowledge. So we're trying to educate the population that's buying property around these ag zones, and we're trying to make sure that there's a means to have that open communication there for them.
I got you. Okay. But would there be anything change with the, they're still in control free, there's no additional restrictions put on them, correct? It's just.
That's correct. It's just
to potential purchasers.
It just gives us, the county, the means to identify those properties if they so wish to be identified. So when we move forward, it gives not only the county, but also hopefully with an overlay, the ability for people buying next to the property to understand, hey, I'm buying property next to agricultural property.
Yeah, I think that's very, very much similar, different name to the ag districts that we're talking about. There's nothing that's going to be restrictive on these ag districts as they were presented by the task force. But they would give, this is an area that agriculture is taking place. It's good notice to everybody who'd be purchasing in or around. But yeah, that could go. I don't know that nomenclature, ag control free, would be the one used, but it doesn't matter to me as far as just the mechanism. Yeah, that's viable.
Yeah, I thought the simplicity of it, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought the simplicity of it, of them understanding that they're not moving out of a control-free zone, that they're actually are just shifting and being identified as agricultural property to let everybody else be on notice.
Yeah, I think that's consistent with the comp plan and certainly doable.
Mr. Ruth, this is Mike Johnson. I've got a question here. It's my understanding, and correct my history if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that when the county started the zoning process, that everything in the county started at a baseline of something called control free, and then there were points identified that then put a particular parcel or parcels into a zone, whether that be residential or whether that be commercial or whether that be some other type of zone from this baseline called control free. Is that a correct assessment? Simplified.
It is, but it is important to make one distinction, and maybe it was implicit in what you're saying, but so when they put zoning in place, of course, it's predated all of us, I guess. I imagine Frankie wasn't around at that point, but when they put the zoning in place, the initial zoning that they did was to put everything in control free, so that was a zoning. Didn't have any restrictions tagged to it. Only thing that's been added since then, of course, as you know, are the setbacks. And then from there, by petition, and I think everything was done with, unanimously by petition, folks around the lake, folks in agriculture areas all petitioned to be rezoned out of control free into whatever district, and then county council approved those, yes.
So in listening to the agriculture, and I surely don't want to speak for the agriculture group that talked earlier, but it sounds like that they were going through a discussion of maybe doing some sort of mapping element Sounds like Mr. Haney might be discussing doing some sort of mapping element. My question becomes is when we start speaking of an overlay, or we start speaking of a voluntary position called ag control free, I'm hearing that as a zoning mechanism, whether that's in the matrix or otherwise. And so my question becomes is if it's something broader than simply mapping, hey, this parcel is this. In other words, where somebody says, I want to be something, is that or does that fall under the laws of zoning? And if so, does that then put them on the matrix? Because if it goes on the matrix, they can no longer get out of it if they want to. Is that all correct?
It can be done that way, but it can be done either way. And like I said, it could be done being an ag district. If the purpose is just to give very clear notice to purchasers, potential purchasers, around and adjacent to these parcels that would be in this ag control-free or agriculture district, it doesn't have to be a zoning. We can do this by these ag districts. I think it's probably a good means to do it without conflating the zoning terminology that we use. I'm not saying you can't use ag control free, but I think it'd probably be cleaner to say this is part of agriculture district, whatever we need to do to make it clear that's embedded within the county records that this is shown as an ag district. I'm more keen on doing that unless you're going to propose some additional restrictions or something that is truly zoning on this. Otherwise, it's just giving a new name to what's already control-free. No new land restrictions, just notice purposes. I would take it probably outside of zoning, outside of the matrix, certainly.
Okay.
So this all came out of the discussion of wanting to identify ag property, and I do appreciate the information. So just let me paraphrase. You're stating that if we so desired, we could go forward with the ag control-free zone, or we can do ag districts. What are the pros and cons of either or?
So, well, I probably the way I led off is the initial con, in that I started out the gate thinking this is an opportunity for someone or someones who are in the ag district to then opt out and go back to control free. So that's putting toothpaste back in the tube that we can't do without exposing the county to liability. But we're not talking about that, as I understand it. We're just talking about identification. Yes, it can be done, and it can be done either of those ways. I think the latter, the district, is better just for purposes of avoiding confusion. And once you get something on the matrix or get it in as a true district, then it gets future planning commission tinkers with it, and somebody's got to keep it in its proper pigeonhole, which can be difficult if we're using the overlapping terms.
Dave?
David, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
If we went with a ag district scheme of identifying ag properties so that we could set up a system where we notify neighboring property purchasers that they're buying next to an ag district property, what would that look like in the ordinances? How would we change the ordinances to incorporate that activity?
Yeah, I have to think about the best way to put it forward. In my mind, it would be a stand in my mind right here, right now, thinking about it, because I came in thinking it was a different animal y'all were talking
It wouldn't affect Chapter 38, correct?
Yeah, I think putting it as a standalone section within 38. So you got notice there, you got notice in the county records, and then probably I think folks who would be keen on an ag district would not mind signage. That this is gonna the county authorizes signage, because that's folks. You're talking about good notice. That's maybe your best notice that you're entering an ag district or something like this. It can be done. Difficult if you're only doing one or two parcels at a time, or however. But
can I make a motion?
Well, hold on, I got a question for you. Mr. Reed, so with the ag districts, that would require multiple landowners to come together, correct?
Yes, for it to be, yeah.
So that's part of our dilemma is we've got this, what's the agricultural exemption called?
They're already identified.
Yeah, I don't
Farmers and
understand.
agricultural.
We don't need to identify them. They're already
You're already
identified.
identified with that.
No, they're not identified to where we can see them. So those individuals that have other control frees around them, how would they be identified?
If you just have one parcel that's gonna say, I'm in the ag district and the rest are control free,
Well, that's what we have right now. We've got parcels that are agricultural events are happening, and they claim in the agricultural exemptions, and I assume they're being filling out a Form F for state taxes. How would those forms be identified?
and so if we've got a donut hole or something that's where it's control free now, ag all the way around, but the owner doesn't wanna go into ag, wants to stay control free. The notice for it is really on the assessor site. The assessor has parcel numbers and it shows the assessment ratio. And so someone can dig into that and find they're being taxed under the ag exemption. That's really the notice that we have now. And going forward, yeah, Mr. Haney, I don't know. I mean, it is a diminishing returns when you're looking at a parcel or two. I don't think ag districts, but the ag district could still overlay a ag zoning, if that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be control free. So there could be, let me word it differently. There could be 10 parcels and 9 of them are zoned in ag. One of them's control free. You put an ag district, label it over these 10 parcels. It doesn't mean you have to make that one come into from control free to ag. It's just part of the district. It's a notification process. It's not additional burdens on the places that are already ag. It's nothing new on the control free thing. So it's, in that sense, it is an overlay. It's kind of just a notice overlay.
I understand, Mr. Reed, but where I'm going is kind of the situation I see farmers in my area around where the family farm has been sold off and you have developments on multiple sides of the property. But yet they would like to be identified, so when the south side of the property is sold off, that the purchasers of that property would understand that that they are in a buying property next to an agricultural area. And all this is control-free right now.
Yeah.
And that's the dilemma we're in.
It's really, that's why I came to that signage notion initially. And, you know, zones are barring having signs all over the place for these isolated parcels. It's really gonna be on the seller and the purchaser. If I were a landowner, I knew a farmer, and I knew a parcel next to me was getting ready to be sold, let's say I'm doing something that someone might constitute think to be a nuisance, I would make sure it was known, for the prospective purchaser, regardless of whether they verbally tell somebody put a sign up or whatever, they're still gonna have the protection of the Right to Farm Act. But obviously, the more notice, the better, so you can avoid having to get into a litigation posture, just like the last folks, who came out and talked about the gun range.
Right, and that's one reason why I was leaning towards more of the ag control-free.
How would that be different for notice purposes?
Well,
And this is not a cross-examination, I'm just curious.
right, so my envision of that is we would take all the properties that have identified through the county for the tax exempt and plug them into the system for an overlay to identify those properties as agricultural properties within the county.
Okay. And so, and they're identified with the assessor's records, have them identified and accessible that with the planning department, or?
I would have to,
Okay. No, I was not trying to interrupt. You're talking about for like mapping, so it's on
Yes.
GIS, yeah,
yes,
individual parcels scattered
Correct.
throughout.
is that possible?
To show them on a map, yes.
Okay. And that's what I was looking at, because I noticed, or when I go to look at property, the first thing I do is pull up the overview and see what the properties are around it. And if this had a color code on it, where I understood that, hey, this property is different, it's got a shaded area across it, what does this mean? And I go down and look at the ledger and, oh, it's ag control free. Well, then that may make me change my decision on what I want to do with that property or even purchase it. So that's what we're looking for. And I don't know if we can achieve that with the ag districts and the signage, because that's going to leave out a lot of the property. I think there's around 192,000 and some odd acres, if I remember correctly, of control-free property. And of that, I forgot, a large majority of it is ag exemption.
I do not think that there would be any impediment to simply having it on our mapping with our GIS map, with the assessor's map noted. The only reason I'm kind of reluctant, one, it's public records, so it's not disclosing, hey, confidential information. Someone doesn't want to know that they're getting ag exemption. It's already public record. But my concern initially was if we miss one or miss five and somebody goes in there and purchases property next to one that we missed, and then they say, hey, the county's got a system in place that's going to identify all ag property. This was not identified as one. I'm living next to it, and I got all these things that cause me grief because it's a farming operation. That I don't think it would be a winning suit against the county, but that does open up the county to some liability. I'm just saying, hey, we could very well make a mistake on that. Nonetheless, that's the only problem that I see just sitting here right now.
Miss,
That idea. So yeah, the map idea is not a bad one at all.
Mr. Root, Mike Johnson here again. The closest thing I can understand to the mapping that we currently have would be, say, school districts or municipalities. Have we run into lawsuits as it stands now, or any sort of confrontation where somebody thought they were in a particular school district or thought they were in the municipality and were not, based on our mapping?
We have with annexations, yeah. Not school district issues, but with municipality issues.
Okay.
Just our mapping catching up to the annexation, and the annexations, they don't even have to follow property lines necessarily, so they can send in and say, hey, we annexed this whole property, but then you dig down into the petition, and for whatever reason, only half the parcel was annexed. And so, yeah, we do have those that pop up, and we do have, some, I'll just say, issues, nothing that's cost, county anything more than, I guess, my time or the assessor's time. But yes, it can lead to some confusion, I guess, if it's done wrong.
That's all the questions I've had for Mr. Root.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I got one. Mr. Root, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is Gary Gallen. I just wanted to get some of your advice, because I know we spent a lot of time with an ag task force. They came out of that task force with recommendations, and you may be privy to some of what the leadership is planning on doing. I've got the tendency to sit back and wait for some of those recommendations to be implemented by the people who are in the business, the ag folks, instead of the planning commission trying to tell them what they think we want them to do to identify the property. So what I'm asking you is, do you know of anything that might help put this issue to bed for a while?
I do not know of anything in the mix, but that people are working on right now. But just your initial point, I wrote the resolution. I was involved in setting up the task force, but I wasn't involved in the meetings or the report. I think Mr. Pearson may know better than I do what's going on right now, but I don't think that there's any real vibrant activity carrying out anything with the task force report at this point in time. As far as
Okay, I've got a follow-up, it seems like there's a resolution to this problem that doesn't take action by the planning commission. If you and James were to work with the GIS mapping folks and discover that there is some way of having a mapping overlay through GIS, is that true?
Yeah, that's my takeaway. My plan was to see if there would be an impediment to just labeling the properties that are receiving the Ag 4%, and for labeling them so our maps show it. And then I was gonna come back and say, yeah, we can do that, and you can buttress it, make it better with this Ag district concept, and this is what it would look like with Ag control free. I just need to sit down and, sharpen my pencil on that.
Okay, so as far as you're
My
concerned,
shot came in to
that's
tackle.
good. Excuse me, Mr. Root, I was talking the same time you were. Did you want to repeat any of that?
No, I think I got it all out.
Okay, so I just want to make sure you're in agreement with the idea that we don't have to have a motion to carry this forward. Is that correct?
Oh, you don't have to have a motion, but I think both James and I would certainly like the planning commission's direction. So we'll find, taking a lead from somebody. We know generally, I think, what Mr. Haney's idea is and general support, but it's certainly better that we have direction, marching orders. So they know what we're about and he's telling us to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Root.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, is there a motion that someone's going to make?
There's not a motion at this time. Would you like to make one, Mr. Haney?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we allow Mr. Root, James to dig in, get more information, and coordinate with the, and then come back.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
I make a motion for Mr. Root and James to dig in to see if we can actually create a map to include all the ag exempt ag exempt properties. Then, of course, bring that back so that we can give that out to the Ag Task Force.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just along that line, whether that's on that or that's something different, I think we need to also, at some point, work on changing the name from Ag Control Free, because I'm assuming they're gonna come back and show that they're agriculture zoned properties that are also getting the 4%. So if we're gonna be doing a map overlay of agriculture properties, it would include both control-free areas and agriculture zoned areas. So it shouldn't be called Ag Control Free.
And what
I
about
agree with that.
conservation property?
I
Ones
agree.
that are under the conservation easement, they'll be in ag also, right?
Yes.
They get an easement, they don't pay tax or
No, the
nothing.
conservation easement won't necessarily be shown in there, so some of those could be, they could be getting them, but it wouldn't necessarily require that they be getting them. And not to put anything before you guys, but if you want us to work on it, you can workshop a name later, we can continue working down this road and we can figure out a title at some point later on.
Sounds good.
Right.
So we have a motion and a second?
Just one friendly amendment is I think we ought to refer to it as a GIS overlay instead of a map, because we already have a map.
GIS overlay.
And that we don't want to talk about it being zoning of any sort.
No. Okay, with that said, all those in favor?
Wait, we're doing Mr. Gahn's amended motion first?
You're supposed to.
All those in favor of Mr.
Like that.
Is
I don't-
amendment?
Did you get a second?
Did he get a second?
Now the
Okay.
main motion. Now call the question on the main motion if you'd like.
I think they're asking, what was your motion?
All right,
Oh,
your
my
motion, we need a
motion-
second.
My motion was to include,
I second his
instead of
motion.
having a GIS map, as what was suggested, refer to it as a GIS overlay.
Okay,
You got
so
it.
we have a motion and a second. Now let's vote again. All in favor of the amendment?
7-0, unanimous.
All right, now, all in favor of the motion that was amended?
It's unanimous.
Okay. We will move down to discussion regarding development standards. Our first order of business is let the gentleman to speak. I will not forget this time.
Thank you. On the record, I'm Tom Markovich, just in case anybody's wondering. I do want to speak to the development standards. I want to suggest something real quick, though, as I've listened to this whole thing on agriculture. I think there's a real simple solution here, and it's very simply creating a performance standard that would require a permit. It could be a one-time permit, and it would be valid until such time that owner decides to revoke it. And that way, it becomes an actual permit, that becomes a permitted land use. It gets tagged and it'll show up on the maps, period. And you don't have to change, and automatically would have to be recognized by zoning only in the sense of, but just like our regular subdivision development standards, all of that has to be, it's always there, no matter what the zoning says, you still have to abide by that. And so a performance standard would cure this whole thing. That's all. Thank you. Now, development standards. Try to keep this very brief and simple. At the last council meeting, one of the council members suggested that one of the new development standards might be a tree buffer on the side of a development and a green space. So, one of the first things that comes to my mind is this: who's going to own that land? And a lot of people are going to assume, you just let a homeowners association take care of that. Well, first of all, almost all homeowners associations have joint and several liability. And I can't think of too many people who want to automatically walk into a situation where they're going to end up with joint and several liability. And just for the privilege of trying to buy a house. That's not to say some people voluntarily decide to become members of homeowners associations. But most of them don't even realize there's a thing called joint and several liability. Neither do they even understand how that can be enforced and the impact that it can have. But it's huge. So that is a major problem with the idea, because of course the other thing they could do is create a homeowners association and then let the thing default and let all that property escheat to the state, and then the county's going to have all kinds of property that they won't be able to collect taxes on because it'll have escheated to the state. Or, it's not a good idea. That's all I'm saying. I've heard a lot of talk about roads. Most especially, I've heard a lot of talk about Highway 130 since discussions of Kiwi River have come back open. I've been building here since 1977. That's a little while. Highway 130 was already here. It was built to build the nuclear station. Kiwi Key came online as a subdivision, 2,000 lots. That's what, 5,000 people roughly. Initially, plus a hotel. They were planning on building a hotel there. Since and after Kiwi Key, you had Crescent Resources develop all the projects around the lake, several thousand lots. How many houses, how many people? And somehow or another, Highway 130 has managed to handle that traffic. I've heard discussions about what about load capacity of the dam. I'm sorry, but it wasn't that long ago that we moved some new reactor vessels into that plant, and they went right across that dam, and I'll guarantee you, there's not 1,000 cars that are going to weigh as much as a reactor vessel. No way, no how. To my knowledge, and I'm really trying to think hard, I don't know of a single new state road that has been built in this county since I've been here since 1977. And yet, the county has more than doubled in size. Somehow or another we manage. We talk about the traffic on 123 and how difficult it is to get through Clemson. I'd love to tell you what one of the county authorities told me, but I'm not going to. But the bottom line is this. It's always been difficult to get through Clemson. 30 years ago, it was a traffic jam. And we're twice as big now as we were 30 years ago. What I'm trying to say is that there's certain things that we've always had development standards for quite some time. And they have changed here and there and things. But it hadn't changed. The one major thing that I think most people are reacting to today is some of the newer developments and how developers are coming in and they'll take a piece of property and they just carve it straight across and then go in there but that has nothing to do with development standards. And I tell you this, and this is why. What people don't think about is in the Great Recession, the whole mechanism for how we finance development changed. Totally. We used to be able to go when all these a lot of the developments in Oconee County used many years ago, they were developed locally by developers who, a lot of them were realtors, some of them were builders, but they were developed in small parcels and they borrowed that money locally. You can't do that anymore. They have changed the regulations. Now, if you want to go borrow money to do a development and you're local like that, you go to your local bank and you want to get some money, might try to get you to sign a personal guarantee. I don't know of any business person that has a brain that would ever sign a personal guarantee for a development. You just don't do it. So what happens is now you have all these corporate builders. They don't need to go to a local bank to get money. They go to their stockholders. They go to and float bonds. They do certain things like that, but they do not go to local banks and borrow money. So there's no worry about a signature and a personal guarantee. They're just never going to do it, and they don't have to. But that's where all the development is coming from now, because people like me and other small guys who used to develop property can't do it anymore because you cannot borrow the money to do it. And so you can look forward to more and more corporate builders coming here because that's the wave of the future. I have many friends who had very large companies, and they've all sold them out. The Mungo Company, they sold out. I have several other friends that own very, very large companies. They've all sold out. And they understand, they could see what was coming. And that is the future. Now, I understand people don't like the way it, comes about. And I get it. That's not how I came up through the development world. But that is the wave of the future because these companies come in and all they're looking at is they got a certain profit model, period. And that's how it works. And they just go in and they're going to carve that piece of property off and just start plunking them in there. And that's it. So those are just some things to think about as we talk about development standards, because we've had development standards here. I went back in my computer and I was looking. I worked with Art Holbrooks in 1997 on development standards. And it took us about 2 years, but we got them accepted back then. They've changed some since then, and we had other things like zoning that have impacted things. But the bottom line is, a lot of things that I hear people voicing opposition to really have nothing to do with development, especially when it comes to the roads. Anyway, that's all I got for right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, Mr. Britt.
Well, on that same subject, I do have some concerns about development standards. And I want to know, what is the plan for the county? Do they have a plan? They have the comp plan. That's not very detailed. What do they want? What does the county want to look like in 10 years? Where do they want to be? And I'm just asking because it seems like we're getting run over by these developers, and they're controlling the scenario. They don't live here. Maybe they do, I don't know. Maybe they want that, but to protect the people that are here, how are we gonna protect the people that are here? What's the plan? Are we a planning commission? I'm asking the question, and in regards to what you said about 130, last Wednesday, I was on 130 for 25 minutes to get from the light at Old Clemson Highway to 123. 25 minutes. You add 2,000 homes to that road, I promise you it's gonna get a little more crowded. I promise. And you can't widen that road because you got the railroad access on one side and you got private property owners on the other side. That road, that's it. And is the state gonna look out for us? I don't think so. The state said they make, what was the access, they make the access right, or the access safe. That's all they said. They're not gonna look into that. Do they care? I don't think so. We have to care about ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. And I just think we need to open that discussion up, please.
Now, the state, they look at where they want, these developers want their entrance or exit, whichever way they want to do it. They look up the road, make sure you can see so far up. They look down the road, make sure you can see so far down, make sure it's all clear, and they'll approve it. They could care less where it's at, as long as they can see how to get in and out without causing a major accident. Now, I was told that by the person that actually does some of those inspections. They look at both sides, look up and down the road and make sure that you can see and it's safe to get in and out. And that's all they care.
Now, there is on that one there is a county road in there that goes off the spur there of Old Clemson Highway at the junk joint.
Old Clemson Highway, isn't that,
Haney has a.
go ahead.
Mr. Markovich, I appreciate you. You've always really bring things to light and put some common sense into it. And that's what we need in today's time, especially with all the fears going on. But also, you're right. I agree with you. A lot of these realtors are coming in, making huge profit, and leaving us with the cost, the citizens with the cost. And Ms. Spicer, you have alluded to this in the past. And I think this is what we need to look at, is how do we protect the citizens of Oconee County from being held with the infrastructure cost of these subdivisions that are moving in. That will help us also control areas of growth. The opportunity zones came out. I don't necessarily agree with where they're at. They're in a hard spot to bring in industry. I would have liked to seen some opportunity zones around some of our industrial parks, but that's not here nor there. But I do think it's time for us to look at what mechanisms we can use to ensure that a realtor is not leaving out of the county and sticking the Oconeans with the cost and him leaving with a big bag of cash.
That requires development standards. Go ahead.
No.
I will have to say, being a realtor, that using the word realtor is a completely wrong use of word in that scenario. It's a
Developer. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Developer and a realtor are two completely different things.
Well, not always, but yeah.
Yes, they are two. One is a development of property, a moving of dirt, and one of them is a selling of real estate. The selling of real estate creates taxes for Oconee County, so it's not a realtor in any form or mechanism.
I'm sorry, please forgive me.
And in truth, the developer is not the person leaving the county without anything and taking a bag of cash, because the county has a tax basis because of the homes that were created. So, I want to make sure that we do some additional development standards, that was what we want to do. but the statement that you made has zero relevance of being correct.
Okay.
That somebody making money and then leaving the county holding the bag is not even anywhere near
So,
accurate.
so you're stating that the investor into this development, when they are moving in, this is just clarification. A good example is a 200,000 or a 2,000 home project. Because we're not requiring them to do anything with the infrastructure, to carry in that burden, that is going back on the citizens. And you're right, the homeowners
But
are the
that's
ones.
incorrect.
It's not?
So the developer has to do all of the infrastructure and then give it to the county. The county doesn't do anything about infrastructure. The developer does the infrastructure and gives it to the county for free.
So the road upgrades,
The road upgrades is on the responsibility of the developer. In fact, it's actually on the responsibility of the buyer of the eventual house.
You will actually pay it.
He'll
to
pass it
actually
through.
pay.
He'll pass it through are you saying the developer will pass it through to the new homeowner?
So a developer, they incur the cost of building the development. They incur the cost of all the road infrastructure, of any sewer line tapping into, of everything that has to be done there, bringing in electrical lines, bringing in water lines, all of that. They then build a house. They have their cost padded in there, which the buyer buys and then pays taxes on. And then the developer, though, gives all of that infrastructure to the county.
but that's infrastructure within that property, right?
Well, that's what you were talking about.
No, I'm talking about the additional burden on the community, the schools, the additional fire response. Police.
Church, post office.
That's
All
where
of
the
that.
ongoing tax is collected by the homeowner, just like every other property in the United States is done.
I agree with that the taxes, but they come slow. So that means that if these developments come in and they are not offsetting some of that burden, one or two things have to happen. Somebody has to pay for that infrastructure.
The developer paid for it.
No, not the infrastructure inside the development. I'm talking about the outside burden.
The new fire station.
New fire station, all that.
That would be when they put in the 2,000 homes. The income off of those 2,000 homes is paid to the county to go into the coffer to pay for the new fire station.
And the 2,000 homes you're stating is going to pay for that fire station that year.
If it's 2,000 homes, it probably will.
Okay.
But if it's 20 homes, no, it's not.
Okay.
But yes.
I understand that, and they'll probably have to pay towards the sewer upgrades, correct? Are they gonna pay for the road improvements that it's gonna incur?
For the road improvements outside the subdivision or
Correct.
inside the subdivision?
Outside, because they're gonna incur a cost. Okay, if you put 2,000 homes up there on 130, right? Can our sewer handle it? Can the county sewer, whatever it is, handle
Now
that?
you're asking a question that should be directed to the sewer authority.
But who's gonna, what I'm saying is, I think we need some standards. We can't keep stacking homes on top of homes, and we don't have, we gotta take care of what we have, because they're not, there's other infrastructure beside what's in that neighborhood.
I like what you said about the stacking homes, because the stacking homes deals with density. And we've talked about density as being the one main tool that a county has to affect development.
Let's let Tom say what he's got to say here.
I understand where y'all are going with the whole idea of the infrastructure demand that is outside of that development. The only time that comes into play is when the development is going on a state road. Because we have a county ordinance that requires a developer to upgrade the roads outside of that development if the studies show that it's required. And then he gets 10 years for the is the fees that, from the taxes to help go towards the bonds that would pay that off. But as soon as that 10 years is up, or as soon as the bonds are paid off, boom, that's it. So can a road be upgraded outside of that development and the developer's responsible? Absolutely. But here's what's happened. Since that ordinance has been put into place, no developer's gonna develop a property on a county road unless it's less than 10 lots, and then he doesn't come under that rule. But if it's more than 10 lots, he's going to a state road because he's guaranteed that he's gonna have access to the state road regardless. He may have to put in certain safety measures, he may have to put in acceleration, deceleration lanes, that sort of thing, but he's guaranteed he's gonna have access to that road. That's constitutionally guaranteed. So, anyway, and then when it comes to things like fire stations, first of all, most of the fire stations prior to Mr. Boulder coming here were all volunteer. And now we are building some, but there's a whole lot of houses here in this county that have never paid for fire stations. And the developers, this is just the kind of a thing that has trended over time. And then when it comes to schools and the added burden to schools, the number of students has not changed as long as I've been here. And in fact, it's actually 400 students less right now than it was years ago. And so, this is the thing, we're living in a county where we have the highest number of retirees in the state. And so, we just don't have, they don't have kids going to school. And unfortunately, we haven't attracted enough industry, unfortunately, to attract the kind of people who are gonna have children in schools. And so, it's a tricky thing. I'm not saying I worked closely with the county and the home builders did in order to create performance standards, development standards. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have them, but I'm just saying that I hear discussions that sometimes go awry. They kind of go off in a direction that doesn't necessarily tie back to what the real problem is. And I know what people are reacting to, but those are emotions, and I hope that we don't build some sort of an ordinance off an emotion. I think it needs to be off from the real deal. Anyway, that's all I got.
So, go ahead.
Dave.
I got a question for Mr. Markovich. I've tried to understand this, and I don't think I do. So, when you build, or when a industrial facility is built, they pay taxes, and they incur load on the system, i.e. sewer load, emergency services, whatever, which is an expense to the county. Then you got a set of residentials that build, they pay taxes, and they incur a load on the county, roads, emergency services, sewer, water, etc. Isn't there a ratio of revenues to expenses, difference between industry coming in and residential coming in?
I think in most cases there probably is, but oftentimes what we see happen is when industry comes in, those services are given away. In other words, the county is going to absorb a lot of that cost in order to accommodate that industry because they want the tax base. They're never going to do that for a housing development. They just aren't. And so, yeah, that's the biggest difference. And just like the other thing is like right now, right? Sewer Authority's talking about coming up with a whole new mechanism for impact fees for sewer. First of all, we have always paid impact fees for sewer here ever since 1987. And then we had them increased it must have been somewhere in the late 90s. and they doubled. And that was by an agreement. I had a conversation with Bob. He called me. He said, what if we do this with I said, I don't see it being an issue. And so we just agreed to it, and they doubled it. Now, here's the thing. Do you think they ever made one report when the county had control on all of that and the impact fees? To this day, nobody can tell you how much money they collected. I can assure you, it was a lot for years. And what did they do 2 years ago at the sewer commission? They said, oh, we've got all this excess cash. Didn't account for any of it. We just have excess money. We're going to give it back to the cities. They're the users. I'm like, how much of that, the development impact fees went into that? And how much of that went back to those cities? You see, these are the things that we never
I think most of
questioned.
that was ARPA money, wasn't it?
Huh?
I think most of that was ARPA money.
No. No, this was, yeah.
Pre-ARPA?
I was at that meeting.
Way before that.
Ah,
Anyway, so, I'm a little off track right there, but
all right, so,
I got a question too.
go ahead, y'all go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Markovich, we've been talking about, the development that we're afraid might happen out at 130. I mean, I haven't even heard that the deal's been done yet, and there's been so much talk, I haven't heard that the developer has actually made the purchase. But maybe you can shed some light on that. I might just be in a fog. But here's the real thing. I understand Seneca would give them, get water out to them, but I'm not sure exactly how they would get the sewer. Do you?
yeah. First of all, the project was approved in 2010, okay? Kiwi River Development was initiated in 2010. They created a development agreement to go in there and build this project out that was supposed to take place over a period of 10 years. They had some special concessions that were added to it, but development agreements are a state mechanism and they expired. They expired after, those particular ones, because of the size of that development, expired after 10 years. However, Mr. Root will have words with me later, that's all right. But I contend that there were certain things that were still approved there that didn't necessarily come under the development agreement. And so that project is in all likelihood a vested project. And so, but there is a 10-inch sewer line.
Property, the ownership of the property.
The owners of the property was Kiwi River. I don't know exactly who has built it, but it was set up as an LLC. You can sell an LLC just like that. And that whole thing, the property, everything, all goes in one fell swoop. It's just, so it's really pretty easy to move a project like that. But the other thing is.
It's public record. You can go and look up the owners of the business.
Yeah, you can go look up an LLC and it's probably gonna give you whoever is managing it for them.
That's correct.
And sometimes you can see through to who actually owns it, but most of the time it's kind of cloudy.
But you're gonna get to the sewer.
Sewer. There's a 10-inch line running straight through there, coming from the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
And the ability to tie into that 10-inch line it's just a matter of putting a pump station in. So that's not an issue at all, at all. And getting water out there, they've got plenty of water. There's an 8-inch main going to, there's probably more than that now, but there was an 8-inch main going all the way to Salem. And so.
From Seneca.
From Seneca.
Okay. Thank you for helping us. I just want to take 1 second here and say how educational this has been. And I think we really need to keep in our minds as a commission that we, have gotten a lot of education tonight, but we need a lot more. And so, like what Mr. Brett was talking about is, I think we have to be informed before we can make good decisions. And a lot of what we don't know, we don't know.
Right.
So on that note,
Yes, sir.
what areas are we weak in? And what would you do to improve those areas?
I think there probably are some things that can be done with density. bearing in mind that you're always gonna affect the people who can least afford to buy a house. Always gonna be an impact there. And it's just something that we have to keep in mind. But I do think, there may be things that we can do to look at density. And it doesn't have to be done through zoning. I think there might be some ways to kind of work around some of that.
Mike?
Just real quick, because it does segue perfectly with that, is in conversations that I've had, two ways to really address what we're doing. One is density, the other is impact fees. Both of which, however, do something dramatic that we aren't addressing when we're talking about the current residents of this county. And I'll use the example of the lunacy of the $15 an hour minimum wage across the United States. And if you think about that and you go, okay, what does that do to the local McDonald's? It obviously makes the hamburger get more expensive for everybody else who buys a hamburger. Same way here, you take and create a density standard, or you create an impact fee, those things get passed along. It makes everyone's taxes go up. And this is why. Because the baseline home for that first-time home buyer or that manufacturing worker or whatever it might be, the price of that home has now gone up. So instead of, matter of fact, I was doing the maths of $300,000 home. You take some of the impact fees that they're looking at in other parts of the state, and that translates to easily another $150 a month. Which again, for somebody that's both spouses are working or it's a first-time buyer, an extra $150 a month can be very impactful as far as expense. But here's the bigger deal, is just like that $15 an hour minimum wage, and the guy, the manager that was making 20 goes, well, if he doesn't have a high school education, he's making 15, I want to make 25. Same thing applies with housing, is you just sell that home for $250,000. Well, the guy that had a home that he thought was worth 50 goes, well, man, mine's worth twice that. And his house goes up. Well, the guy above that who said, well, I thought mine was 500, but if he got 500 for that, mine's at least worth 750. And exponentially, everything goes up, which means that everyone in the county pays more taxes based on the decisions we make here with regard to some of these factors.
It's a question for staff. Impact fees for subdivisions, where are those in the ordinance?
We don't have impact fees.
Okay, so no impact fees. So that's one thing we need to talk about.
It's in state law.
It's in state law.
Would you correct that statement?
Yeah, we end up paying impact fees through, just like on sewer, but it ends up being paid through municipalities. We used to pay it to the sewer commission. That was when the sewer commission was owned by the county. But now that the sewer commission is its own entity, the fees go to them, and so it's, so technically the county does not have any impact fees. They are very tricky, and because you have to do some very expensive studies, and you have to demonstrate the need, and just like if you were trying to get, like if you needed a school impact fee, it would never happen here because you can't, there's not enough population increase to substantiate it. But anyway.
I'm talking about a subdivision application to the county impact fee.
You're gonna have to be a particular, you can only use it for capital expenses that has to be very peculiarized capital expenses. And it can only last as long as until that capital expense is taken care of. And so, once it's done, it's, then that fee suspends. So there's a whole bunch of very special rules when it comes to doing impact fees, and they're kind of tricky. I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm just saying. But I also wanted to add in one more thing, because Britt had mentioned what happens when, let's just say, if sewer capacity weren't available. See, that's the first thing that any developer's gonna go in and do. If there's not sewer, if you cannot get a permit, period, if they don't have enough sewer capacity. So you're gonna go to just like, we saw the map tonight of all these different applications that have gone to the sewer commission saying that they'd like to, be able to tie into the sewer. You have to get that first before you can get anything else, because until you get your DHEC permits, you're dead in the water, so.
Okay, so one more thing I wanted to point out to the group is section 32-214, which is subdivisions, lot improvements. That's what talks about your density right now. It's got lot arrangements, lot dimensions, lot size, building lines. And building lines, it says see section 3810.2 for all setback requirements in the control-free district of the county. So basically what it's saying is, go to chapter 38 under control-free, and that's your lot size or your setback requirements. So if we are going to target subdivision density, I would think that would be where we would start in the ordinances.
Is that
Am
what
I
you
wrong?
think, James? Do you think that's right?
It's one place that you can.
Yeah, the density is controlled by the zoning. So the underlying zoning for the majority of the county is control-free, which does not have a density standard. In Lake Residential, you have a density standard. Every other district has a density standard that is set by the zone.
Good. Well, so control-free, like you were saying, is 80%. If we start there, we're controlling 80% of the population. Organically, right now, we are building, there's custom homes being built in certain areas that are very expensive and being built very slow, and there's this high-density stuff like we're seeing heavily over near Clemson, that's gonna come in places that it's gonna come in. If we control-free as a whole, we will very quickly affect everybody's taxes versus saying, in this control-free area, we want it to be more residential, and therefore let's create a residential zone in that area rather than affecting 100% of control-free.
That makes sense.
I would say this also. Prior to zoning, we had minimum lot sizes. And then when the zoning came about, it started messing with all these different things. You take Port Bass, for example. We had minimum lot sizes. And Port Bass was created before there was any zoning standards, any development standards, anything. There were lots in Port Bass that were only 25 feet wide. They were designed for people to put a little tiny weekend mobile home in there, 8 feet wide. And so there were a whole lot of old subdivisions here that would never meet any of these standards, and then all of a sudden they wanted to be zoned. Well, then it got real tricky because they didn't even meet the standard. Half the lots in Kiwi Key that are now Lake Residential would never meet the zoning standard, period. And so, it has made things very complicated. I'm not saying it can't be done, and maybe it needs to be done. I'm just saying zoning it changed things considerably. Anyway, those are just some things to think about, is how one is affecting the other. That's all I got, unless y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Something to think about, guys.
You know what? We need a workshop.
Yep.
How about the planning commission spend some extra time outside a regular meeting before or on a different day and talk about development standards? There's about 15 things we could do. James is great with some ideas. He could give us some great guidance. We could tap into what's going, somebody at Clemson, all those professors over there that are in urban planning and everything else, if we want or don't want, that's fine. But this conversation is kind of all over the place, and I think a workshop would be a really good place to throw out some ideas and see how it's going. And, I mean, I keep thinking about something Mr. Markovich said about don't do things with emotion, but I'll tell you, when it comes to all the trees on 770 acres, potentially being clear cut, I'm emotional about that. And my biggest fear is that developer's gonna come in, clear cut, and wait 10 years for sewer. Because he's not gonna get sewer there until something big is gonna be built. And so why clear cut? And there's 250 acres of highland in that property, so we're gonna have huge stormwater runoff. We have no stormwater runoff management program, correct?
We don't have our own, we rely on the state for stormwater.
So we need something at the county helping to control this potential problem, because our job as a commission is to be future thinking, to be proactive, so we're not reactive. And anyway, I think it'd be a really good idea to have some kind of workshop.
I think a workshop idea is great. I think it's a great suggestion. What we need to address, though, is we keep talking with the cart before the horse, in that we have identified all of these, oh, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, but we have yet to put down on paper what citizens perceive the problems, top 5 problems to be. I have heard clear cutting of the trees, and that's a big one for me as well. I think that driving down through Pendleton and seeing the neighborhoods with the trees cut down is terrible. But I've also heard traffic congestion is an issue. I've heard too numerous of driveways accessing onto a county road as being an issue. I've heard infrastructure as being an issue. We need to put down on paper what are our issues, so that then we can match the tools that already exist to deal with mitigating an issue. Not just trying to come up with pie-in-the-sky tools when we haven't identified what issue that's to solve yet.
Very well said.
I think you do that in a workshop. I would defer to James for his top 5, maybe, or 7 ideas that he has, that he's like, in his job, if he said, oh, if we had an ordinance for this or an ordinance for this, it'd make my job easier, I would like to hear from him.
So,
Could you put that in the form of a motion?
Nope, there's no motion.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we, is that okay with you, Mr. Chair?
go ahead.
I'm
sir.
sorry, that's maybe I'm speaking out loud. Anyway, my motion is that we do provide the commission with a workshop that would be outside of the normal meeting times that we have. We would defer to James and his staff to help coordinate when it would be. When and where,
And
I'd like
ideas
the
to talk about.
citizens to attend.
yes. It should be an open meeting, yeah.
Should be an open meeting.
I think it doesn't need to be a public forum, meaning that we should be able to control the amount of input that people have. But we can call on, the people that attend if we want to hear from them. But I just don't want it to get into, they're talking about development standards. There's 50 people here, they're upset, and every one of them want to talk to us. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we need it controlled to where this is not a normal public forum. It would be a workshop for us to educate ourselves.
That's right.
Could we potentially have people, citizens, email their top 5 issues in a questionnaire format, and then we could correct, whatever the word is,
It would,
combine that information and say, okay, this was mentioned 72 times. It was the number 1 issue that everybody emailed in. This one was mentioned 50 times as the number 2 issue that everybody emailed in. We've done questionnaires before. Is that something that could be done? So we would have something to work off of.
Are
I'd
we
rather have the
talking about the
professional tell
motion
us.
right now? I'm just
Did
curious.
you make a motion?
Yeah, I
He
did. I made a motion, but nobody seconded it, so.
Could you repeat it?
Okay, I make a motion that we have a workshop that's determined by relying on staff to give us a time and place to have this workshop.
Second.
now it's open for discussion.
And the workshop would consist of what objective?
Well, like we discussed, is that we should rely on professionals to educate us. And one of the problems I have, Mr. Johnson, with getting the public to tell us what's on their mind is that professionals have already studied this kind of stuff, and they know what the typical issues are, the big issues. And certainly with James' experience, he can help guide us instead of getting us to where, at some point, I'm not saying we don't need public input, but I'm just saying, as we're trying to educate ourselves through this workshop, we don't need a lot of distractions.
I don't disagree. My only question is when we say the experts, if I ask an expert in Atlanta, are the consumers, or the citizens concerned about clearing of trees? I'd say probably no. Are they concerned about additional traffic congestion? They're probably going to say,
We're not
it's
talking about
already been.
experts in Atlanta.
Well, when you're talking about an expert, where are we talking
I'm
about?
assuming that
Talking
James
about
is going to
James
guide
and-
us into the.
Yeah, we're talking
Yes,
somebody
well,
that knows Oconee
That
County.
is substantial for us to
Here to Oconee
consider.
County.
I think what you're talking about is offsetting concerns. You've got, on the one hand, you've got affordable housing, you've got homelessness. On the other hand, you've got higher standards for subdivision development, which includes not clear cutting or whatever.
Green space.
So where do you strike a balance? I think that's the first thing we need to start with in our workshop is what are these offsetting concerns? What does the county want? And then that, whatever the county wants, then we move in that direction with the ordinance changes. Otherwise, you're not gonna do anything that makes any sense.
If you want to look at what the county wants, you can refer to Chapter 11, which is all about using ordinances and overlays and zoning.
Mr. Chair.
This is what the county wanted back when the comp plan was developed. So these ideas are here, but we're not using what the county wants.
Affordable housing's in there too somewhere, maybe not chapter 11.
And it's happening in Utica with the mill.
Mr.
That's not affordable housing.
They
So,
say it is.
The comp plan is somewhat outdated.
Right? It's
The
gonna-
data on it is almost a decade old. So it kind of blindsides us with trying to come up, where are we at now? Where is the growth at? What do we need to plan for? I understand that that's, what we've been going by. But we need to also realize that we're looking at older data. I do agree with the workshop. I think it's a great idea. It'll be a good spot to get us some additional education. We're truly blessed to have Mr. Markovich and, Lord, I forgot your name. Mr. Johnson, here to help us with some of the questions and concerns. But my fear is, and Mr. Nix alluded to this, is anytime we start in on density standards, if we're not careful, affordable housing is out the window. Matter of fact, we drive it to a point, if we're not careful, to where only the upper middle class can afford houses, everybody else is renters. So we have to be thinking about the cost, and that's where I would like for us to look at it. Get away from the emotional and look at the data. What is the cost? What is it going to cost us if we decide to go from, a 5-foot buffer to a 25-foot buffer? What's the additional cost in an X amount of subdivision of houses? Those are the things we need to look at and understand what we're truly doing. Because, it may look nicer to have a 25-foot buffer out there, besides the issues that Markovich brought up. But what's the additional cost? Because if you do that over 20 acres, how many acres of developed property have you took out of affordable to be affordable housing? And that's what we need to think about.
One point, the comp plan is not that old.
That's what I was figuring.
Yeah, and it's like 4 years old, and every 5 years we are required to update it, so it's, the update's coming 2024.
This
next
comp-
year.
The data I looked at online was 2008 to 2013 for us, the data.
Well, but in terms of citizens'
All
opinions, that's
the,
more.
all the citizens, all the stuff
Okay,
that we've been
I
approving,
understand,
that's all.
we've been upgrading, but I'm talking about the data, the sourcing data we're pulling from.
Well, it's not as old as the other one was. I went through this whole thing.
That's where I'm talking from.
This is newer data
Yeah.
than what the old comp plan was.
And actually, looking at the comp plan, it shows some positive movement in the agricultural side.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and I'm not asking to restate it. Y'all remember what it was?
Yes.
All those in favor?
It's unanimous.
Opposed? Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn.
That's the one I was waiting on.